Hey guys, what's up and welcome to my channel. My name is Miley. If you are new here, hi, welcome to my channel. Every week I do a new DIY video, usually in the home decor, art, and fashion realm of things. So if you like one or all of those things, you know what to do. In my studio, back in my studio, back in my studio. Guys, I don't know if you can tell by my song, but I'm back in my studio with not a power tool in sight. It has been a while since I have just sat down at this desk and made some art. So I, like every other home decor enthusiast, I love having art in my home, but art can get pretty expensive, so I usually try to make the art myself. I did a video like this back a few months ago where I made some easy abstract art for my fireplace, and this week I am going to be making some easy watercolor art that anybody could make for your home. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, that was loud. Okay, to get started on this project, I had to go around collecting some frames. Some of these frames I already had, and some of them I went out and got for this project because, you know, if you're gonna make art, you kind of need frames. Also, you specifically need frames for this project. And let's get all of this out of the way so we can start on the first piece. I started off this painting, drawing, whatever, by sketching out 9 different images. I know I said this was easy art. I like to draw, so I sketched out the images I wanted to do, whereas if you don't trust your drawing ability, you could just print out a picture and skip this step. Totally an option. But if you are like me and you do like to draw, I highly recommend just trying out your own little fun illustrations. For me and this first piece, I decided to keep it nice and simple. Anytime I'm trying out something new, I like to start off on the easy side to ease my way into doing something a bit harder. So for this first painting, I drew out 9 different little flower plant-based illustrations. And actually, now that I think about it, all of the art I made for this video were all kind of plant-based. That was not intentional. You could do whatever you want, but I guess this week I was inspired by all of the flowers blooming in my yard. And once my 9 little illustrations were all done, it was time to bring in the frame. And taking the glass from the frame and my little sketch, I taped the sketch to the frame and started going over the sketch on the glass with some paint markers. And I ended up using 2 different kinds of paint markers. One is by Sharpie and it has a little bit of a thinner tip. This helped with some more fine detailed lines. And then one was by Posca and it has a thicker tip, which was great for adding definition to certain areas where I wanted it. Taking a sheet out of my watercolor sketchbook that I have, it was time for the watercolor part. I started getting out all of my new watercolors. This was the first time I have ever worked with watercolor like this. Usually I have one of those really cheap palettes of watercolor that you just dip your paintbrush in some water and then you dip it in the paint and you're good to go. This was the first time I was ever using ones where you have to put a little bit onto a palette and then mix in your water. I'm not sure if I totally liked it. The pigment of the watercolor was really nice, but I also felt like I was wasting a ton of paint. No matter how little I was able to get onto the palette, it was still too much for what I needed. So I didn't really like that part, especially the fact that this was like almost $40 instead of my normal $5 for watercolor. And as you can tell by now, I am doing some very advanced watercolor art right now. You have never seen blocks of color like this before, right? right? But like I said previously, I was going for something really simple, so I picked out 9 different colors for my palette and just painted 9 different blocks. Something I thought would be fun that could totally change up the look of this is with every changing season, you could do new colors behind it. Does that seem extra? Yes. But am I extra? Yes. And this is the first painting all together and all complete. This might be obvious, but I flipped the illustration so that the paint is on the inside of the glass so that it doesn't get messed up. But yeah, this is the first little paint illustration piece of art all complete. I did forget to sign until it was all together, so I signed the glass very quickly and completed this first painting. Okay, let's move on. This time, instead of doing a sketch on a separate piece of paper, I decided to draw my sketch out right onto my watercolor paper, and I'll explain more on why I did this in just a little bit. But I drew out a little citrus illustration, and I was going for a piece of art that I would put in a kitchen. I will say this art definitely leans more towards a modern farmhouse vibe, so I will say this is my take on some modern farmhouse art, because I think collectively, as the human race, we should be over signs in our kitchen that say things like, "But first coffee," or "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee," or my personal favorite, signs in our kitchen that just say, "Kitchen." Okay, I am just joking. If you have these signs, please happily hang them up. You do you. But in the future, if you ever want to burn these signs, please invite me to that party. I would love to be there. I mean, I'm even slightly embarrassed to admit that I have a container in my kitchen for utensils, and it says utensils on it. Yes, at some point in my life, I thought that was a good style choice. I think it's back when I thought I had a farmhouse style, but then realized I pretty much gravitate solely towards industrial things. This was just a very long way of me explaining that you can have some fun kitchen art without having a sign. You can say so much without saying anything at all. And I have always been a huge fan of those vintagey looking botanical illustrations, so that is the look I was going for with this art. And this time around, I decided to switch to my other watercolor. You know it's quality when the plastic covering falls right off. Now let's get back to why I drew the sketch on the watercolor paper. So when you paint on the glass and you flip it over, this obviously reverses the image. And for this painting, I wanted everything to loosely line up with the illustration on the glass. So this piece of paper has the sketch on the back, and I was able to hold it up to the light and lightly line out where everything was. But I also didn't want it to be perfect, so I specifically made sure to go outside the lines. Personally, for me, I like it when it's not perfectly lined up. I think it gives it more of an artsy touch. So again, like the first painting, I did nothing special with the painting. I slapped some orange down, slapped some yellow down, did some green for the leaves, and then I put it all together, and I really like the way this turned out. If I could change one thing, I wish I would have done a background color, but besides that, I think this is a fun little artsy illustration, perfect for a kitchen. And on to the third painting. I quickly drew out a sketch, and yep, we are back to flowers. But this painting brings in a little tip I have for making art for your home. 1, get a cool frame, and 2, get a mat. Anytime something's in a cool frame with a mat around it, I think it just makes it look more official and like you spent a lot of money on a piece of art. And this gold frame I had just laying around. I got it for $5 at Goodwill, and it came with the mat, so I thought this would be perfect to use for this project. This painting isn't for me, it's actually for a friend that's about to have a baby in about a month or so, and I ended up texting her, asking her questions about her nursery, and she had no idea why I was asking, but she ended up sending me all these pictures of things she has for her nursery, and one of the pictures she sent me is of a a blanket that has this flower pattern, so I loosely based my sketch off of the pattern that was on this blanket. She also ended up talking to me about the color scheme she's going for, lots of blues, yellows, a little bit of pink, but all very muted versions of these colors, nothing too bright, and a lot of the stuff she has for the nursery is all vintage, so I tried to make this as vintagey looking as possible. And I was going to give this to her only if I liked the way it turned out. If I didn't like the way it turned out, I was going to put it in the back of my closet and just have it be a constant reminder of a failed attempt at art. But luckily I am fairly pleased with how this turned out. I might redo the watercolor, but I'm still not sure. But that's the best part about this art. It's pretty low stakes. You can change things whenever. If you don't like the illustration on the glass, you can use some glass cleaner and the paint comes off fairly easily. And then of course you can easily change the watercolor. All the watercolor that I did for each painting took me maybe 30 minutes to do, so it's all really quick and doesn't take a long time. And then to complete this painting and give it a little bit more of a vintage flair, but also bring in those yellow tones that my friend was talking about for her color scheme, I had some gold leaf laying around, so I just started to glue and place that kind of randomly wherever I wanted throughout the painting. And I actually love the little extra detail this added to this painting. And before putting this all together, I added my signature because you should always sign your art, even if you think it's small and insignificant. Be proud of the thing you made. And putting it all together, here is the final look complete. I think with the gold leaf and the mat that has the gold trim and the gold frame, I actually think it makes it look like an official piece of art, if I do say so myself. And for this fourth and final piece, I wanted to quickly try out this art without drawing out a sketch and just printing out an image. So I printed out an 8x8 picture of a rose. I know, shocking. I told you I was going for a floral botanical theme video without even realizing I was doing it. And I used this picture just like I would a sketch, taping it to the back of the glass and going over each one of the lines with my paint markers. And I cropped this image so that the flower took up pretty much the entire space of the painting. I did that so that I didn't have to figure out where to put the paint. I could just slap some paint down pretty randomly. And again, the messier and more random the watercolor is, I think the cooler the overall piece turns out. If you did want to try some art more like the second and third picture I did, there is a way to do it. One, print out the image normally so you can use that for the glass, and then print out that image again but reverse it. Using that reverse image, you can lay it over the watercolor paper and go over all of the lines you want, and this should leave an indent on your watercolor paper so you know exactly where to put your paint. And this is the fourth and final picture all complete. This took me maybe 20 minutes to make, and I love the way it turned out. This is actually probably one of my favorite ones that I made for this video. And overall, I am pretty happy with how each painting turned out. Some of the watercolor I'd like to change just a bit, but besides that, I am pretty pleased. This was such a fun little art project, and it was all really low stakes because, again, you can kind of change this up at any time. Nothing by any means is set in stone. If you liked this video, guys, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification button so you know when I post, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. Bye, guys!